Parishkar sir, am I audible to you?
Namaskar, ma'am. You are very audible, loud and clear. Thank you.
Namaskar sir, welcome sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'm ready, and let me know when you are ready. I'm available. I'll switch off the camera for the while so as not to trouble you or put you to any inconvenience. But I'm observing and listening everything. When you want me, just let me know, and I will switch on the camera.
Sure sir, sure sir. Well, Parishkar sir, your voice is very low. We cannot hear you properly.
Okay, ma'am. This pandemic will reshape our world. We don't yet know when the crisis will actually end, but we can be sure that by the time it does, our world will look very different. Keeping those words of Joseph Borrell in mind, I, Parishka Shresht, on behalf of the School of Legal Studies, welcome one and all present here and all our YouTube viewers to the panel discussion on election and pandemic. May the window of knowledge be open for all of us through this event. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the management of Babu Banarasi Das University, our chairperson, ma'am, Mrs. Alka Das, our vice chancellor, sir, Dr. A.K. Mittal, our in charge, School of Legal Studies, Professor Dr. Gitu Singh. Today, we are extremely blessed to welcome us a luminary, Dr. Vikram Singh, as keynote speaker of our event. To introduce Vikram Singh, sir, is like showing a light to the sun. A former officer of the coveted Indian Police Service 1974 batch. Sir has been a former Director General of Police Uttar Pradesh. Sir has directly worked for the modernization and induction of the state of art technology and universal best practices to make police effective and people friendly. Sir is rated trainer and speaker on issues relating to security, man management, crisis resolution, team building values, and ethics. Sir has won President's Police Medal for Gallantry in 1986 and 1988, bar to President's Police Medal for Gallantry in 1987 and 1989, President's Police Medal for Long and Meritorious Service in 1990, President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service in 1996, Kathin Seva Medal of 2001, Bar to Kathin Seva Medal of 2002, and also Limca Book of Records 2014 mentions him as the most highly decorated police officer. Sir has to his credit books entitled Ecosystem of Central Himalayas, Chambal Dacoits, Bagis or Bandits, ISIS, The Black Canopy of Mental Slaughter. His book, Human Rights and Police, has bagged the national award presented by National Human Rights Commission, New Delhi. Dr. Vikram Singh sir is currently working as Chancellor of Noida International University. Sir, truly it is an honor for us to share the same screen with you. So, without further ado, I now invite Dr. Vikram Singh sir to enrich us with his words and insights on the topic of election and pandemic. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, Mr. Parishka Shresh, thank you ever so much for the very kind and magnanimous introduction. As they say, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. You are very, very magnanimous in your profuse praise. I don't deserve that, but you are a great and a noble person. Thank you ever so much.
My pleasure.
Respected Dr. Gitu Singh ji, distinguished panelists, distinguished students and faculty members who are a part of the audience, coming to BBD is like a pilgrimage for me. My association with Dr. Akhilesh Dasji dates back to the days of his father, late and most respected Babu Banarasi Dasji, who was my chief minister also. I had the honor and privilege of serving under him. They say about Lucknow, and I'm in your neighborhood just now, Jisko de na maula, usko de asafuddaula. The same can be said about Dr. Akhilesh Dasji. I have not come across a single person who has gone to him, approached him, and has returned disappointed. So my tribute with folded hands to Dr. Akhilesh Dasji, the chairperson, Dr. Alka Dasji, Vice Chancellor, Professor Mittal sir, and Dr. Geetu Singh ji. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to interact with the best minds. For conducting elections for the last and the 36 that I was there in the police service, let me assure you, if I have to choose which is more demanding, a daughter's wedding or conducting an election, it is a very, very difficult choice. And to add to that, the pandemic, you can well realize that this deadly combination of elections and the pandemic can put the biggest possible administrative challenge to one and all. I will tell you how and why, because I have hands-on experience, not only of the elections, of the pandemic, but both rolled into one. In any election, the first thing that you possibly encounter is, have you taken action under because you're law students, I will not go much into the interpretation of the legal provisions. Dr. Das and Dr. Swami Chatterjee, my illustrious colleagues, are there. And Dr. Das forewarned me that your time is just 15 minutes. So when my time is about 15 minutes, Dr. Das, you will tell me, either you cough or you say, yes, your time is up, please wind up in 60 seconds. So I would say that I will not go into the details. The first exercise that is done, deposit all the licensed firearms. And that includes me, an ex-DGP. My weapons have been deposited in Thana Indira Nagar. Step number 2, take possible action under section 107.116 subsection 3 to ensure peace and public order. Action under 109.110 of the Criminal Procedure Code to round up bad characters and also ensure that those who have a history are booked under 110 CRPC. 145, attachment of disputed areas and property. And the most important section that you have heard is 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code, ensuring that public meetings, assemblies are as per the permissions given, sought and given, so that there are no illegal assemblies. In the backdrop of the pandemic, social distancing, hand washing, and ensuring all COVID appropriate behavior during the course of elections. That is most imperative. Therefore, in the backdrop of social distancing, the provisions of sections 144 and 151 CRPC are so important, because without them, peaceful and safe elections may not be possible. I will not go into other provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code, but there are two more important aspects which I would say that all students of law would need to understand the provisions: the Epidemic Diseases Acts and the amendments in 2020, as also the Disaster Management Act. Why the Disaster Management Act? Because both the Epidemic Diseases Act give you the authorities the power to search trains, buses, public transport, and all where there is a possibility of people with infection with the disease going. Therefore, when the authorities have been empowered, as also sections 2 and 3 of this act are most important. The Epidemic Diseases Act, assault on the corona warriors, assault on the medical staff, assault on all those who are a part of fighting the pandemic, are covered by sections 2 and 3 of the Epidemic Diseases Act. We never invoked these two in earlier elections, but the tragedy that we have all gone through, the demanding times, Epidemic Diseases Act came as a boon. Though originally framed in 1897, it came with the due amendments like a lifeline to the administration and to all of us. Coming to the Disaster Management Act also, I wish I had the time to take a full tutorial. It's a beautiful statute and it came in very handy. It came in very handy for several reasons that you may recall. That Section 51 of the Disaster Management Act is very versatile and gives tremendous powers, wide powers to the administration to act against those. The section prescribes punishment for obstruction, for refusal to comply with any direction given by or on behalf of the central government, of the state government, of the National Executive Committee, or the State Executive Committee, or the district authority under this act. Anyone refusing to comply with orders is liable for punishment with imprisonment up to 1 year, or fine, or both, in case this refusal leads to death of people. The person liable shall be punished with imprisonment up to 2 years. Section 51 has two important reservations. Under the Act, the action was on the part of the person has to be without reasonable cause. Without reasonable cause. And failure of an officer to perform the duty without due permission of lawful excuse. Now, does it bring to your memory anything significant that happened in India? Please go back in your time files and you will realize that in April 2020, the Home Minister made spitting in public a punishable offense. Long overdue, but this was required. In March 2020, when thousands of migrants gathered at Anand Vihar railway station in Delhi due to the sudden announcement of the countrywide lockdown, 2 Delhi government officers were served show cause notice by the center under the Disaster Management Act. You may also recall that something unseemly happened during the visit of our Prime Minister to West Bengal in the last assembly elections. What happened? In spite of the fact that there was a forecast of a cyclone, a meeting was called and the Chief Secretary of West Bengal did not appear and chose to ignore this call from the highest quarter. There was a debate that perhaps serving this noting of the Chief Secretary was uncalled for. But to my mind, I think the Chief Secretary disappointed me and all of us law-abiding if you refuse to take cognizance of a notice issued no other than the PMO and you choose to go underground and not to go there. Well, what can I say? Indeed, the Chief Secretary is expected to comply with the instructions and observe the rule of law, and especially during the course of the pandemic. The provisions of the Disaster Management Act are all pervasive. Although no action has still been taken, but my strong recommendation to the DOPT, Department of Personnel and Training, which is the cadre controlling authority for the IAS, to take drastic and deterrent action against not only the Chief Secretary, but any person, any officer who chooses to ignore the directives of the PMO or any statutory authority to address the pandemic and take action accordingly. Any disagreement on that? Very good. Now I'll go to back to the pandemic and the elections. You must have heard of 144 CRPC, and the breach of CRPC is punishable under 188 of the IPC. Lakhs and lakhs of people were put behind bars. And then on the other hand, there were double standards during the course of the last assembly elections. People tearing into shreds the COVID appropriate behavior. Mass collections, mass gatherings. To the contrary, this Honorable Supreme Court had to mention that perhaps the new dimension and the aggravated conditions of the pandemic is because of the fact poor observance of COVID appropriate behavior during the elections of West Bengal and Assam. But I'm very happy to see that COVID appropriate behavior has been ensured this time has been ensured this time. And in Lucknow, I did not have the occasion to see any COVID inappropriate behavior, and that is a matter of time. We have learned from mistakes. But it is not without fault or without paying a heavy price to learn this basic lesson. My colleagues, Dr. Parantab Das and Dr. Swami Chatterjee, are aware that I am also the president of Center for Accountability and Systematic Change. And one of our PhD scholars, Mr. Virag Gupta, leading advocate of the Supreme Court, has been our advocate, and we have moved multiple writ petitions in the Supreme Court and also the various high courts. For what? We have moved primarily to see that frivolous registration of 188 cases should be avoided. In case there is no malicious intent and the poor laborers and those who were perhaps no option but to collect at any bus station or a railway station. But this is very different from a political rally which can be predicted, which can be regulated, and which could have been managed in a much better manner. But the disappointing factor is, show me the man and I'll show you the rules. The double standards in respect of the VIPs and double standards in respect of those commoners, the common people like you and me. There were cases where people were not wearing a mask were challaned in UP and Delhi, in any number of cases. But the VIPs showing inappropriate COVID and behavior and conduct, nobody looked at them. You'll be happy to know that our observations and our petitions were accepted by 2 high courts. And perhaps Dr. Anandas may have the time, perhaps can make a mention of that. The CSC filed writ petitions before the Supreme Court with prayer that Article 360, financial emergency, could be considered for an appropriate lockdown. Indiscriminate use of 144 CRPC and consequent 188 IPC was though dismissed and withdrawn by the Supreme Court, but we sent representations to all the state government asking that no FIR should be lodged under Section 188. Subsequently, 2 high courts upheld our points, and after a representation to all states and UP and Maharashtra withdrew lakhs of cases filed during the pandemic, and this is the satisfaction that your team, Dr. Swami Chatterjee and Dr. Parantab Das and I have, that those lakhs and lakhs of cases were withdrawn. There is another petition pending before the Delhi High Court, which is still pending, and it was prayed that in 2021 elections, leaders are not following COVID guidelines, and so penalty should be imposed. A very revolutionary demand and a very revolutionary concept. But yes, this country believes in equality before law. You and I, howsoever common or with modest means we may be, we are equal to the highest, so-called highest in the country, as far as law is concerned. FIR should be lodged against them as being done with the common man. The CASC also published a book on unmasking VIPs. कानून से है दूरी, VIP को mask नहीं है जरूरी. So this was the title of the book, and it became very popular. And I'm sure Dr. Das would be having spare copies, and I would request Dr. Das and Dr. Swami Chatterjee to give a copy to Dr. Geetuji, so that you see that the good work that we have done to face the pandemic and also in the backdrop of the elections, that we do not do anything that is irresponsible, uncalled for, and inappropriate. There were situations that our medical college was flooded with patients during the course of the election, flooded with patients. It is, I would say, God's grace that 2,500 plus patients came, and by the grace of the Almighty, they went safe and sound back home. We ran out of oxygen. We went from pillar to post. We went from one place to the other. They were good Samaritans and they were not some. But the lower functionary also threatened. The lower functionaries also threatened that we will take action against you under the Disaster Management Act, if you refuse oxygen to anyone. My basic question then was, okay, don't speak to the Lord, speak to me. If I have oxygen and I deny it, I'm liable. If I don't have oxygen and I say I don't have oxygen, I cannot keep patients and subject them to a possible tragedy and grief. Therefore, the miscarriage of justice and poor application of law and the Disaster Management Act. And it was my painful duty to tell the officers, much junior, much junior, old enough to be my son, make no mistake about it, you cannot be the only person who can lodge an FIR against me. I also have the authority to lodge an FIR against you. And to the contrary, there should be no mistake about it. Who is the aggressor and who is the aggrieved? As of now, I am the aggrieved and you are the aggressor. And for two reasons, let me tell you, I've been drafting FIRs for the last 50 years and I know what I can write about. We are running short of staff. No complaints. We have run out of oxygen. We are only requesting in public interest, please either give us oxygen or remove the patients to a place where they are. Because of the elections and the pandemic, there was an acute shortage and the companies manufacturing oxygen perhaps were working overtime, no blames. But yes, understanding of law, it is where the great work that your seminar is doing, that your webinar is doing, to understand the rudiments of law, the instrument of the Disaster Management Act, the Epidemic Diseases Act, the provisions of 188 are not only in the hands of the administration, in informed administration, it is in the hands of you and me. But I must say, to the fair-mindedness of those officers, they came, they apologized and have a cup of tea, and the matter ended there. So ignorance of law in our country, Dr. Geetuji, Dr. Varandav Das and Dr. Chatterjee, Dr. Shresht, is no excuse. Ignorance of law cannot be an excuse. Therefore, proper education through your webinars, proper education through lucid interpretation of law and the case laws through pamphlets is an imperative. Elections are almost annual features now. They don't happen. Some election or the other keep on happening. And therefore, I would say, education of the basic rudiments of the Epidemic Diseases Act, the Disaster Management Act, the provisions of the CRPC and the IPC, attack on corona warriors. Dr. Geetu will tell you what are the consequences of attacking a police officer on duty. Dr. Swami Chatterjee will enlighten you, and Ashutosh ji will tell you what are the consequences. 332 IPC is the first stepping stone. I can tell you that a person's career and life is finished if he attacks a police officer or a magistrate on duty or a public servant or a corona warrior. 332 is just the stepping stone. You can scale it up depending upon what level of the attack was. Malicious, mischievous, with an intent to kill, then invoke the provisions of 307, invoke the provisions of 120B, invoke the provisions of even the National Security Act, subclause 1, public order. This is the authority that the state gives to the administration. But then the two important points I would, Dr. Das, please tell me if my time is over.
So you still have time, sir.
I still have time. Okay, I will continue. The problems that I have encountered during the course of the pandemic and the course of elections is ignorance of law, not only in the minds of the public, but also in the minds of the administrative staff, the officers on duty, and others. Under these circumstances, it is always prudent to understand, of course, the Disaster Management Act was new, the epidemic diseases were new, but the IPC was not new, the CRPC was not new. But reckless, careless, and application of rule of law without application of mind is courting the recipe of disaster. Therefore, your webinar should have a roadmap for future elections and the lessons that we have learned in the past election during the course of the pandemic. Proper application of the Epidemic Diseases Act with amendments, the Disaster Management Act, COVID appropriate behavior, and how to enforce it within the ambit of law, and those who transgress the rule of law, what possible actions can be taken against them without malice towards them, yet firmness in the right. This would be a great service to society. This will be great service to Uttar Pradesh. It will be a great service to India also. And also, to the government and all the corona warriors who face a very daunting and an uphill task when, during the course of conducting peaceful and fair elections, they also have to handle the pandemic. With these words, I again thank Dr. Geetu Singh ji and all members of the law faculty of the Babu Banarasi Das University, which again is like my second home. I wish you a great interaction. Thank you so much for being so patient and giving me your attention. God bless you all. May God always bless your path. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And truly, we feel privileged that we had an opportunity to listen to Dr. Vikram Singh, sir. And definitely, our attendees will get benefited by your words of wisdom. We sincerely thank you, sir, for gracing our event. And as sir has to leave us due to his prior engagements, I now invite our in charge School of Legal Studies, Professor Dr. Geetu Singh, ma'am, for her word. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Parishkar sir. I extend my heartfelt thank you to Dr. Vikram Singh to spare time and deliberate on the issue of pandemic in election, which is a very recent and very relevant topic, as I feel, because as students and researchers, we have forgotten to study things which we should know, and we should make the society know that there are certain rules and laws which we have to follow, irrespective of the fact whether we are an individual, a lawman, or a VIP. And this forum has been put forward so that all my students and my participants get an opportunity to know the intricacies or the integrities of the law which is required to be followed during election and pandemic. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful deliberation on all the legal aspects. In a very short time, you have touched almost all the laws relevant in of the topic, and we hope to see you soon for a good discussion on the Disaster Management Act. As you said that you would be taking a long time to discuss it, so we would make it a plan to have an interaction with you in the near future. With this, I thank you so much, sir, and we extend our heartfelt thanks from the department and the university as a whole. Namaskar.
God bless you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Namaskar. With your permission, I'd like to leave now. God bless you all. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Over to you, Parishkar, sir.
Yes. Moving on, we feel fortunate enough that we have some of the most brilliant minds of legal arena with us as our panelists. Dr. Ashutosh Hajela, Associate Dean, School of Law, Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies, Indore, a graduate in Science and Law, and a postgraduate in Law from the University of Allahabad. Sir is a gold medalist in law and a recipient of Chancellor's Medal in Law. Sir is having a vast teaching experience of 17 years with subjects of interest as constitutional law and administrative law. Next, we have Dr. Parantap Kumar Das, Associate Professor and Head, School of Law and Legal Affairs, Noida International University. Dr. Das has published two books on Chambal dacoits and ISIS. His third book on artificial intelligence and policing is under publication. He has to his credit numerous articles published in various national and international journals. Previously, Dr. Parantap Dasa has worked with various capacities in different organizations like National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Sciences, CARA, Central Adoption Resource Authority, National Institute of Social Defense, and Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. We also have with us Dr. Soumi Chatterjee, Assistant Professor, Institute of Legal Studies and Research, GLA University, Mathura. Ma'am is having a work experience of more than 8 years in litigation and academics. Graduated from Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, Patiala, with honors in criminal law. Ma'am holds a postgraduate diploma from Indian Law Institute, New Delhi, and a PG from Amity University. She has authored two books and published various research papers in national and international journals. So, before moving on to our uh, group discussion, there is a gentle reminder for our YouTube viewers that they may post any of the queries relating to the topic in the chat box for our panelists. They may also name the panelist if they want to ask a specific question from a specific panelist. So, beginning with our agendas for the panel discussion, the first one is that what do you feel are the real challenges for the conduction of a fair election during the times and situations of a pandemic? And for this, I would like to hear Dr. Ashutosh on this topic. Sir, over to you. Okay, I think Ashutosh sir is having some connectivity issues. Dr. Parantab, over to you, sir, for the same. Sir, kindly unmute your mic.
Am I audible, Parishkar sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now you are.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Parishkar sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak such an interesting topic. Before I express my opinion, I must thank the senior management of Babu Banarasi Das University, the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, the Chairperson, the Dean, Professor Singh, Himanshu, and others. Indeed, it is an honor to speak on such a challenging topic. Because election in large democracy like India demands vibrant, proactive states. Sometimes it becomes very chaotic because political interaction, political infringement during elections, the mass mobilization on a large scale, the pandemic make the situation immensely challenging. The sudden spread of the COVID-19 pandemic all across the world that disrupted every aspect of public life. More importantly, the virus is unlikely to end any soon. As the fresh cases continue to rise, under such circumstances, with the resumption of election during this pandemic is a huge challenge. As Dr. Vikram Singh has mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the process of restoring normalcy after election needs some strong measure. Social distancing, using of sanitizer, COVID appropriate behavior, etc. The challenges of conducting election in a democracy like India, which has the largest number of electorates in the world, are manifold. And until and unless we have an accountable governance, until and unless if the election commission and the government take some measure, it will be a drastic and adverse effect on the livelihood and the life of many people. Very recently, we have the UP elections is going on. A couple of months ago, we have Bihar election. And I must say that until and unless we take very cautious and strong step, or else this election will be an ensuing health crisis. The strict precautionary guidelines in order to curb the spread of infection during election is something which election commission must think about. What I personally observed that during the campaign, if things like virtual rallies, the online political communication between the leaders, between the political leaders and the electorate, with the elaborate use of social media should be encouraged. Even for mass rallies and road show, the limited public participation and reduced number of vehicles with proper social distancing measure and adequate intervals should be directed by the Election Commission. Recently, we've observed that in certain places in UP, the Honorable Home Minister of India conducting door-to-door campaign with limited political cadres and having the election nomination for the candidate with reduced number of people have also been instructed. This is something which is a very encouraging at the highest level of the government. If this thing should be encouraged, then definitely it should have a extremely good effect on the health and livelihood of the people. Even for the polling process, a number of special measures would be taken. The number of polling personnel as well as polling booths have been increased than before. The limit for maximum number of voters in each polling booth has to be reduced for avoiding overcrowding. There should be a provision for thermal scanning of all voters and availability of globes for the electorate before accessing the EVM, the electronic voting machine, for casting the votes has to be ensured. The provision for postal voting, I think, which is very important, is to be made available for the vulnerable voters like the elderly and specially challenged person, the handicapped people precisely. Adequate supply of hand sanitizer, as Dr. Singh has mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and other necessary measures for ensuring health safety for both the polling personnel as well as voters will also be made available as per the guidelines issued by Election Commission from time to time. Even special provision of secluding voting in the last hour of the day for the quarantined and COVID-19 positive patient may be arranged with adequate caution.
Okay, sir. Just sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I'll get back to you. Yeah, I'll get back to you in a moment. Ashutosh, sir.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Sir, so my question is that, as Dr. Das said, that all the things like virtual rallies or the using of the online media, that should be used during this pandemic situation. But sir, do you think that if we just rely on these techniques, so these techniques will be used and moreover, they will be misused? So what are your views in this?
Yeah, sir. First of all, I would like to offer an apology for some technological glitches on my part, and I could hear a bit what Dr. Vikram Singh was telling about the role of the Election Commission and the processes that were involved. And coming to your question, yes, you know that these are times of hardships, and this is an era of pandemic, and the entire public life, the political life, every sphere of life has come to a very different modus operandi. And then when it comes to holding the elections, yes, this is a constitutional mandate. Yes, this is a mandate of the parliamentary democracy. And then the right to health is a very paramount right, and the balance has to be drawn as to how do you ensure that right to life does not get jeopardized, as well as the political processes, they do not come to a standstill. with that stressed, sir, yes, what is the need is that you must adopt the technological advancement, the means of technology, in order to create a balance, in order to sustain a balance between the two things. That is the right to health and the right to vote. And then I remember Dr. Singh was telling as to how we have resorted to technological means. And yes, the political rallies that are happening, they are not as per the COVID appropriate behavior. So what can be resorted to is that we can go in an online mode. And of course, there are repercussions. Of course, there are huge ramifications as to what will be the success rate when we switch on from this offline mode to online mode. But then this is how the rallyings, they may be converted from offline mode to online mode. And I believe that right from the stage of nomination of papers, as well as reaching out to the people, and then even the process of polling, it must be, we must gather courage, we must boost our infrastructural and technological capabilities in order to switch from offline to online. And yes, we are definitely status quoists, and we don't want to change one set of mind, but then this is how we need to move ahead, and we need to switch to different technological means, so that this fine balance, this fine line can be maintained. So that is my take on it. Straight, sir, over to you.
Sir, just on the lines on which you were saying, all these protocols to be followed. Sir, what do you think that we are also conducting the elections in some of the remote areas where all these online facilities are not available? And if we go for the offline thing, so what do you think that what should be the role of the election commission in conducting a fair election and while safeguarding the health and safety of the voters plus the staff present there?
Right, sir. Right, sir. So you are very correct in your observation, and we have to avoid both the extreme ends. We have to be between North Pole and the South Pole. So even if you say that 100% compliance with online technology is to be adhered to, this is practically not possible in a country like India with so many inequalities. So I suggest, sir, that a hybrid mode is more convenient, because there are a huge amount of variations also. When we come to the use of technology, even the political parties, they are not at a sense of equality. So there are some political parties which are heavily advanced in sense of technology. Similarly, there are people who are well aware of the technological developments, and then, as you rightly say, that there are people who are illiterate. They might be having these smartphones, but then they may be having poor connectivity, or maybe that they don't know the nuances about these technological things, the apps things. So it is better that the election commission has been doing this. So when it comes to remote areas, when it comes to dealing with the people who are illiterate or who are ignorant of these advancements, it is better to have a physical mode of polling. So if you have physical polls, then what can be required is that you ensure that the staff and the polling agents, they are sanitized, they are vaccinated, they adhere to the social distancing norms. Maybe that the working hours, maybe that the polling hours, they are given 2 or 3 hours extra. So a hybrid mode, I feel, that would be doing some sort of justice. So this is how online and offline, a combination, a permutation and combination between the two, is what can be thought of, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dr. Somi, ma'am, what do you think that does democracy suffers during pandemic on the pretext of the protocols to be followed?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I'm extremely humbled because I get to share this screen with Vikram sir, Ashutosh sir, and my very own respected guide, Dr. Parantab sir. And it's really a privilege to be a part of this event. Before I answer a question, I completely agree with Ashutosh sir, what he said about the hybrid mode. I want to say something about, in addition to what Ashutosh sir said about the online process. You see, whenever we work anything online, there is a huge amount of data transfer that happens. There is a huge data that is involved, and data transfer that has happened, and in our country the data transfer also will require a huge amount of processing of such data, and in here we do not have such facilities yet. And of course this is one of the reasons why yet online voting is not very feasible. Hybrid mode or physical mode is great during this time. And for our democracy, see, first of all, the basis of our democracy is our voters. And we saw in the last 2 years how pandemic had completely taken over our lives, and uh, we forgot the way we lived earlier. And election, as our respected Singh sir had said, that elections are a regular basis of in our country. And yes, it has suffered a lot, but we cannot say we cannot rule out the fact that just because of the pandemics we will not hold our elections. There are challenges, definitely. Our expert panelists had already discussed so many things, but I'll just like to add one thing, that there are challenges. We know the issue, we know how to handle it, but along with that, we also need to be very, very careful about how it is being done. Now, awareness plays a very, very vital role when it comes to such issues. Um, the normal process of our lives, our voting rights, they suffer because there is a large amount of people, they are not aware. All problems have one solution about awareness, like the way people reacted during the first outbreak, the first wave, the way people they were very scared, and now people are aware of how to deal with deal with such pandemic. Now we are not scared so much. So elections, or conducting of such elections, how to go for a vote, it is upon completely our responsibility how we should behave. We should follow such protocols, and we should always maintain the guidelines of the pandemic. So, Parishkar sir, if the guidelines, and Parantab sir had already said, and Singh sir also said, that um, basic things that we should follow is, we all in our daily lives have already opted about regularly use of sanitizers and using of mask. Another thing that what Dr. Vikram Singh sir was talking about was the rallies that he was mentioning. You see, one thing I would like to say is, um, there were rallies and there were a lot of blame games that were happening during the election time. We all know about it, that such rallies should not be taking place. And this, I agree with that huge gatherings were really discouraged. But can we also look at it from a different perspective, that we already knew how to take care of ourselves, and as general public, it was upon us to maintain such kind of to maintain the protocols, to use masks so that we don't get affected. So if we cannot just blame others, we know, we are adults, we know how to take care of ourselves, we know what to do, how to do it. It is just that the reckless and callous behavior that sir mentioned earlier, this is the main problem, and this will only be tackled through awareness. If somebody is going for an offense, they need to know they need to be made aware of, legally aware, that what rights I have. And if somebody is using it against us, or like sir said, that section 2 and 3 of Epidemic Diseases Act, how many people are aware of this? that assault on corona warriors, that we could just use such these kind of sections and provisions. Such awareness needs to be conducted, and especially during elections and voting rights in the rural areas, or because you see, we are sitting in cities and we are discussing through among literate minds. We are studying law, we are practicing law, so we are aware of it. It's very easy for us that we research, and because we are literate, we know about it, how to do it. But what about when we go to majority of India, who doesn't have any idea? They just know that this is our election card, we have to stand in the line and cast vote. Apart from that, they are not aware of anything else. So it is not just about the how they can conduct elections and how our rights are getting violated through pandemic, but also along with that, there are many things, especially awareness needs to be done. Also, the Election Commission in their website had uploaded various protocols to be followed during this kind of pandemic times. So what happens is, just uploading on the website does not help. You have to make a large scale awareness program to let people know especially the rural areas, that you need to follow these protocols, because they don't understand the importance of following such protocols. So they need to be made, or they need to be made such kind of familiar even before the elections start happening with such kind of things, so that they imbibe that in their regular lives. I think I'll end to that. I hope that has answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Quite sufficiently. Thank you for this. And as Dr. Sobi rightly said, that the instructions as well as the guidelines need not always be uploaded on the website, but they should be implemented also. And for the same reason, sir, all of the analysts, we have witnessed two different scenarios. First was when there was like physical rallies. So we all know that nothing of the sort of protocols was even seen or heard in those rallies. But when we talk about like polling stations, all those things and all those guidelines get notified there. There are rings also maintained for the voters. They are of 6 feet social distancing, also everything. But they are completely absent in the physical rallies. So the second scenario is when we got into this virtual rallies mode. So what do you all think that if on the behalf of the candidate who's contesting, if he is doing this virtual rally, so is he getting, if he or she is getting a proper and a sufficient representation to express his views in this virtual rally? Dr. Paramkar, sir first.
Well, it is extremely challenging for a candidate to have the mass representation during the virtual rallies. But during this pandemic, we have a few limited choices. I think keeping the present situation in mind, and because of the interest of the health of a large section of citizen, I think this virtual rallying should be encouraged, should be promoted, and the guidelines, as Dr. Shomi Chatterjee has mentioned, that it is already been uploaded in the Election Commission. But my concern is that it should be properly executed and implemented. This is very important. We as a country is very interesting. In fact, we have formulated various guidelines, various norms, rules, and regulations, but never in our day-to-day life we strictly enforced it. We never implemented it in a proper methodical way. So my take on that is that, of course, virtual rallies should be encouraged, should be promoted. And in the era of information technology, and everyone has this smartphone and the digital things. Nowadays, in the present budget, talked about digital currency. So I think it should be encouraged, it should be promoted. Definitely, there should be certain hiccups, certain challenges are there, and our country is very intelligent. Our population is very intelligent. Definitely, they should overcome these obstacles in a very short span of time.
Ashutosh sir, your take on this?
Sir, I would appreciate what Dr. Shawmi said, and I am reminded of a old case, but a landmark case of the Supreme Court in Harla versus State of Rajasthan. There, the Supreme Court said that the essence of publication in the Gazette is not a mere publication. So, when you are making a publication, this actually needs to reach out to the masses. Whatever you are publishing in print mode must be supplemented by anything else that makes people aware about a particular notification. So when the EC publishes something that this is what is going to be the protocol, this is what the leaders are supposed to be taking care of, this is their responsibility, moral, ethical, professional, political responsibility, something other than this also needs to be done so that you are actually aware that this is what has to be done, this is what is not to be done. So if some supplementary stand is also taken by these political parties under the guidance of the EC, this would be definitely a welcome step. And something that comes to my mind is that I belong to Allahabad. So I remember that Mr. Amitabh Bachchan was canvassing for the Congress at that point of time, and he used to go with a team of his supporters, and he was practicing door to door, reaching out to the people and telling about his vision about the nation and the party's vision about the nation. So this also I feel is a good stand by taken by the EC when it says that there can be a door-to-door canvassing also with not more than five. I believe it is 5 or 6 people that the EC has warranted. So if there is an apprehension that virtual rallies they do not connect you with the masses, then this also can be taken as a supplementary measure. Over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now we have some interesting questions for you all. So the first one is that in the name of pandemic, government has postponed all of the competitive examinations, but elections are being conducted on time. So what is your opinion about this situation?
Sir, may I?
Sir, sure.
So this is really a very interesting question because everything has been put on hold. Even the delivery of justice has been put on hold. Till the time we adopted to a virtual hearing, so it was put on hold for a period of time. But then we believe in parliamentary democracy, we believe in representative democracy, and then the constitution mandates that there cannot be an intervention of more than 6 months between two sessions of the representatives of the people taking a call on our points. So this is a constitutional mandate, and it is good that we are devising a new strategy as to how do we maintain the spirit of the constitution as well as stir very smoothly and comfortably through this act of pandemic. So I believe that there is nothing wrong in having the elections because you cannot have a caretaker government taking the charge for a pretty long period of time.
Parantam sir, your take?
Yeah, I completely agree with whatever Dr. Ashutosh has mentioned, because we are living in a parliamentary democracy. So in fact, we cannot have that luxury to postpone the election for an indefinite period of time. See, everything has its own criticism. Even the best work has its own criticism. Dr. Ashutosh has rightly mentioned that in the present circumstances, election must be and should be conducted, of course, with some safety measure, with some protocols, and there is no harm in conducting election. So far as the second question, that there are other things which has been kept postponed, but you have to understand what Dr. Ashutosh has rightly mentioned, that there is a constitutional mandate. We cannot, beyond 6 months, so we cannot afford that. So, of course, my take is that of course, elections must be conducted during this pandemic, of course, with certain protocols.
Sir, with all due respect of both the views, sir, I just personally have one thing, that no matter it's a constitutional mandate, but sir, do you think that it is over the life of the citizens? And in the last past also, we have seen that some of the elections were conducted, and apart from that, in the staff that were used, they died to, they had a fatal record of a loss that we had. So conducting elections at that time was so much important over one's life. So your views.
Definitely, sir. Your observation is quite fine an observation. And as I had earlier also mentioned, that what is required is to be drawn a balance between the right to health and then this right to vote. So this is the responsibility on all of us. We as a responsible citizen, of course, we have to indulge into COVID appropriate behavior. And then if it comes to attending the rallies, as Dr. Chatterjee was also telling, that the consciousness needs to come from within ourselves. So if you are observing all the protocols, if you are using N95 mask or double mask, or if you are trying to safeguard yourself, then your life is at your mercy. So that is how something needs to be seen, that the balance is drawn. And of course, sir, right to life is right to life, nothing above it. But then you need to devise strategies, manners, and protocols as to how you can draw a fine line, fine balance between the two things.
And so can there be some compensation schemes also if we have loss due to this pandemic?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
think
Definitely,
the government?
definitely. Of course. If I talk like a legal administrator, yes, there has to be some sort of welfare scheme, if not compensation scheme, and then it has to be closely monitored so that it is not abused, so that it is not manipulated.
Sir, I would like to add one thing to this
Yes,
for your question. That you see, the basis of Indian democracy are the voters of this country. So since 1951-52, when the first elections that took place, it was just say 17.3 crore voters, and today we have nearly say 95.14 crore nearly voters. So this uh, growth this growth shows that the power of the country or the development of the country that is happening. And you see, pandemic or the coronavirus, uh, this is for the first wave. We were all taken aback because we had no idea about what was this, how it affected our lives. But this is a problem, and we, as like the human power that we have in our country, we found out a way how to deal with it. Elections are a daily process of this country, the daily working of the country. And like when our lives were stopped, we were suffocating. So when elections are stopped, the very life of this country will be suffocating. And also for the online thing, I'll tell you one thing, that upcoming days there is going to be a boom of the metaverse. I hope the coming, because right now the discussion on metaverse has been going on in a very large scale. And Parantap sir just said that everybody has a smartphone nowadays, and they almost everybody knows how to, even a 2-year-old child knows how to go through a smartphone, because they are born that way. They are born in a IT age. When we are kids, we had no idea about it, but now the kids are smarter, they are more advanced. So you see, in the age of metaverse, political virtual rallies are possible, complete virtual rallies are possible, and also virtual votings are also very much possible in the coming ages, when metaverse is going to be a reality.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you picked up a very important topic regarding this only. And the next question is regarding this. That is it possible during COVID times, like everything is conducted online? So is there any possibility of online voting, that the voting can be linked with the Aadhaar ID? And if it is, so we must also make sure that we talk about like literacy and the non-literate people. So there are technologically illiterates also.
Of course.
So considering
Of course.
them also, is it possible to
See,
have this way
this
of?
we see things cannot grow overnight. Nothing can happen overnight. The literacy will increase eventually. People, because you see, I'm just giving you a very normal and a lame example that we, in our age, we are the first generations to be using technologies like, say, the VR eyes or the specs that we use. Our parents had no idea about the VRs. Technology is increasing, and with generation, people are being educated about these technologies. And as far as our previous generations are concerned, we have to make extra efforts in educating them. Also, when we go to the rural areas where there is no such availability, or where there is no such technological advancement there, in interiors I'm talking about, the extra efforts need to be made by the government, concerned government. Because if you need to stop the spread of the COVID, and if you want to shift from physical to virtual, then extra efforts need to be done. But
Yes,
this will happen eventually. It cannot happen overnight.
And next, we have a question from Dr. Sanskriti. Greetings. Do you think that it was a good decision to conduct elections during this time, as we have already witnessed the wrath of second wave same time last year? So any one of you may answer it.
Sir, we have already commented upon this, and let us not be very speculative. Let us not assume that whatever happened last year is going to be replicated this year also, provided we have safety measures in hand, provided we have protocols in hand. And as we already emphasized the need for having elections, it cannot be postponed sine die. And let the EC take a call, and let it maintain the protocols. Let all of us be aware about what are we supposed to be doing, how with a sense of responsibility we are required to be acting as responsible citizens. So if that is the case, we will definitely sail very successfully through this turbulations also. And we'll keep growing, as Dr. Swami was earlier mentioning. I remember we used to go to the Aikar Bhavan, income tax office, to file the income tax returns in physical. We used to be queued up, and it took almost 2 hours to reach the desk from where we used to file the income tax returns. And thereafter, this linkage happened, and OTP is generated. It is linked with Aadhaar. So why should we be not planning for the voting things also in the same manner? Let the voter cards be linked with Aadhaar, some sort of OTP be generated, and if we are more ambitious, let us think of blockchain technologies helping us in linking this in a very, very technological friendly manner. So we need to evolve. We need to grow. We cannot be glued up to the traditional pattern of voting.
Okay. Sir, the next question is that what measures, according to you, can be adopted for the smooth casting of votes? Because people are afraid of going out, and especially in the times of pandemic, and going out and casting their votes. So, what do you think that the measures can be done to encourage the people to move out of their houses and cast the votes, especially in the times of pandemic? Because earlier, sir, we were telling, and all those campaigning was that they must exercise their vote. Now we have to now do that. They have to overcome their fears, and then they have to come for exercising it. Parantab, sir.
Well, Ashutosh sir has already responded that this blockchain technology, some sort of app should be devised. And Dr. Chatterjee has mentioned that we are living in an era of IT. So, in fact, there may be different scientific measure. Election Commission definitely will take a very judicious call on that. And so, see, it's a very challenging time. It's a very difficult time for all of us. And we should not make excuses to postpone the elections. Uh, because the previous question that last year was drastic, so this year so speculative. In fact, that is the right word Dr. Ashutosh has mentioned. We should not be so speculative. We should not be so critical of the entire situations. Science is advancing in a very rapid manner. So the blockchain technology app, there may be some software development may take place in a couple of years. And it is not so difficult to give a vote. Dr. Ashutosh mentioned about the OTP connecting with your Aadhaar. So nowadays, the Amazon, Flipkart, we are using so many apps, Uber, Ola, for doing every sort of things. Now, giving a vote, I don't think that it will be so difficult to cast your vote during this period. Of course, it can be
No,
done.
sir. So that's
Sir,
perfectly
in
okay.
in
And
sir, in
if
addition
you
to this, I would like to add one thing that going out and being scared of casting vote during elections, you see, uh, there is no lockdown right now, and people are anyway going out for doing other things. The moment when you step out of your house, that means you will end up or you will enter crowded places. It is just not in the lines of the, or when you're going for going to cast your vote. So and if you're going to cast your vote, and if somebody is scared, you can take your own precautions. Cover yourself well. Please carry your sanitizer. It comes in very handy, the little bottles you have. Please carry. Sanitizers are great. Apart from the online method, if obviously it will take time, but as long as the online method is not being applicable, and if you're saying that we are scared of going out and we do not want to cast our votes, I don't think this is an example, because anyway you're going out for other work.
And ma'am, to add to your words, we have different thought processes for different things. So we have no hesitation in going to Sangam and having a dip in the Holy Ganga.
Yes,
We
yes, sir.
are very much interested in going to Haridwar and Char Dham Yatra, and we'll
Yes, sir.
definitely go to Shukra Bazaar to purchase cheap vegetables. But when it comes
Absolutely.
to casting your vote, you are all the more cautious कि यहीं से होने वाला है COVID.
Yes, absolutely, sir. I agree.
rightly said, sir. That was quite a take on the issue. Okay, with that, sir, today we had an opportunity to listen some of the eminent personalities, and we were able to learn about the interconnections in respect of election and pandemic. We truly feel privileged here, and we thank you all from the depths of our heart. And truly, our attendees will definitely get benefited by your words and insights. I would now like to invite our respected in charge ma'am, Professor Dr. Vikram Singh, for her kind and motivational words. Ma'am, over to
Thank you, Parishkar sir. Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to say or cast my vote of thanks to all the panelists. They are learned faculty members, academicians of good universities and institution. Sir, I would like to tell you that I had this idea of conducting the panel discussion on pandemic and election because here in UP we are in the election phase, and I saw that there were a number of issues being raised that there was a lockdown, and then all of a sudden lockdown was removed and now everybody is enjoying their life as it's a normal phase. And election is one of the situation where a development, the growth of the country, our rights and everything is dependent. And we as academicians and students hardly think about the repercussions of having elections during pandemic, or how it affects the democracy. What are the how does voting choices change during pandemic? People related to the previous acts of the government, like what had happened in the second wave, and then they cast their vote seeing what they have done, what this government, and especially UP is looking forward that all the drawbacks or all the problems which we faced in the second wave would be reflected in the election result. That would be shown in the election result. And that was the reason I thought that we should have a discussion where we can think about what actually affects, or how does election gets affected due to pandemic. So we had a great discussion. I heard every one of you. We had great logical answers for the questions, and I hope all our participants have also enjoyed hearing it from you. Thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you, Ashutosh sir. Thank you, Parantap sir. And thank you, Dr. Somi Chatterjee. We would be privileged to have you in our other sessions when we organize. With this, I extend my thanks also to Parishkar sir for coordinating or moderating this session. And I hope we'll be joining soon for some other great discussions. With this, we take leave. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. Thank you, all the participants, for joining us in this discussion. By this, we say bye for the day, and we'll be meeting soon.
Thank you.
Over to you, Parishkar sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words. With that, we come to the conclusion of our program. We had some very serious talks about the election processes and the protocols to be followed. And now, in the conclusion, I just want to say that whenever I think, just to liven up the mood, that whenever I think about this pandemic and the chaos it created, I sometimes wonder if all this is happening because I didn't forward that WhatsApp message to 10 people that we all receive. With that, this is Parishkar Shresh signing off from today's event. Hope to see you soon in a better tomorrow for all of us. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.